can talk about youth participatory action research. Participatory action research is research where those who are affected by an issue are the ones that research the issue, discover the solutions through their own research, and then make recommendations. And this is an example of youth participatory action research in which these youth, we have 6 representatives here who have participated in the AIM Ideas Lab, conducting research among their peers, and they have things to tell you about the state of mental health in the county of Monterey today. And so here we go. Now I have to do the slides. Do we have a slide? Okay, we may have to be doing this without the slides. That's called, winging it until we can get our team back there. Okay, so we'll go ahead. There we go, the AIM Ideas Lab, there we go, Youth Participatory Action Research. So we have to thank people. It's always important to thank people. There are 3 people in particular, I would like, it's been a long day. 3 people in particular I would like to thank, and they are Tricia Wiltshire, Kimberly Moyer, and Jenny Lang. Would you please stand up? These 3 women have, and I know you guys have directed this program. Thank you. Without these, they've been the leaders of this amazing program. Also, we have a partnership with Stanford Behavioral Health and the County Office of Education, who helped review their surveys and did some real deep dives with the kids. And Alcove Center. The Alcove Center is a program of Stanford Behavioral Health where they're interested in putting behavioral centers around the state that are designed for and by the youth. And so part of the project was to do an assessment for Alcove to see if we can get an Alcove site perhaps here in Monterey County. And then we have all of our funding partners without whom none of this would be possible. So without further ado, I am going to give you the honor and privilege of getting to know these amazing 6 students. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself, but I also want you to add a little bit about your purpose. Why did you join the Ideas Lab? Why are you here? Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Citlali Nava, and I am a senior from North Salinas High School. I joined the AIM Ideas Lab because mental health is not often talked about. So I want to make a change in our county. I believe in finding a solution to all problems, and I won't be speaking for myself, but to the 6 of us who are up here and to all teenagers who are facing mental health issues, when I say that we want to seek a solution for mental health issues and hope to open new opportunities where teenagers have an environment which they feel comfortable and safe enough to talk about the mental health issues they are facing.
Hi, I'm Roxy Bennett. I'm a senior at Monterey High School. And part of the reason why I joined AIM Ideas Lab was because during the pandemic, a lot of my friends would come to me and talk about the mental health issues they were struggling with, but there was no solution. We just kind of sat around and said, well, what now? And the fact that I can be a part of the what now and be a part of the solution and directly help these people is amazing.
Hi, my name is Emily Fernandez. I'm a sophomore at Everett Alvarez High School, and I joined Ideas Lab to educate myself on mental health and learn ways to support my friends when they were going through a tough time.
Hi, I'm Gia Panetta, and I'm a sophomore at Carmel High School, and I joined this because I found myself part of a large community of youth who had been negatively impacted by the pandemic. And like Roxy mentioned, we didn't know where to go, we didn't know what to do, and I think it's really important for us to be prepared, and that's for us to solve this as quickly as possible so that it doesn't happen again.
Hi, I'm Michael Julian. I'm a senior at York School, and I joined the AIM Ideas Lab because I was interested in learning more about youth mental health and the challenges youth face in Monterey County.
Hi, I'm Marley Miller. I'm a freshman at Salinas High, and I joined the Ideas Lab because usually when teens' mental health is being talked about and solutions, it's normally the adults in the room, while the people who are actually being affected are on the sidelines and don't have a voice in what's actually going to be helpful and beneficial in treatment. So for an accurate solution to be made, I think that our voices need to be heard.
Yeah, that's why, yeah. And do any of you, do you all remember, you are 6 here, and how many youth were trained in research in the county? Does anybody know that number? How many do you represent?
Yeah, so we represented 47 students did the project, and it consisted of 6 weeks. And we learned about the difference between quantitative and qualitative research.
How did you find out about how did you find out about the program?
Well, I found out about the program through my AP literature teacher. She mentioned that there was a program offered in Monterey County, and it was talking about mental health. And for the first time, I was like, well, finally, there's something that I can participate in and hopefully make a change.
Great. And what did you guys learn? You spent a lot of time. I think there were like 1,100 volunteer hours or something like that. But what did you learn? What did you learn through what were you taught?
We spent a lot of time focusing on quantitative and qualitative data, and the quantitative data involves numbers and percentages, and came from a lot of demographic questions we asked. And qualitative data involves purely just subjective information.
Great. You all learned about the data. I've learned about research. Is that something you're normally taught in high school? Do you learn about research in your high school classes?
Yes.
You do? All of you?
Me personally, I don't.
I didn't learn about, really? Did
Yeah, I
any
thought-
of you learn about conducting research? I know why, Michael, because you took statistics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. He was the statistician on the group. Okay, let's go. All right. So what are your research questions? Tell us about it. Like what are you looking to find out?
So our main research question was, what are the major mental health challenges youth are facing today in Monterey County, and what are some potential ways to address them? And me and my group were especially interested on the effects that the pandemic have had on youth mental health. And one of our main objectives for the AIM Ideas Lab was to determine whether there was a need for an alcove center in Monterey County area. And here's what we found. So to determine the mental health challenges youth are facing in Monterey County, we designed a survey which took 5 to 10 minutes to complete. And the survey consisted of 11 quantitative and 1 qualitative or open-ended question. And the survey included demographic information such as gender identity, race, and age, and also questions about youth's attitude towards mental health. And the survey was distributed during a 1-month period via text messages, email, and personal outreach, just communicating with friends and family members. And here's what we found.
Yeah, so as our first slide, we will be starting with the survey response of age, and we have a variety of 15 and 16 years olds being heavily represented. This indicates that mostly sophomores and juniors filled out the survey, and here we see that it is indeed true. So mostly 10th graders and 11th graders filled out the survey. However, we did get a good representative sample of each age group, and we received a good representative sample of the cities. We tried to survey as many cities as we could, and we did receive quite a few. Here we can see that Salinas and Carmel have the largest numbers. When we see Salinas, it is not surprising to see that 31% of them were youth, because Salinas, in fact, has the largest population of youth. However, in Carmel, that is an overrepresentation of Carmel, and we learned that we have to be more relative to the population. One of our other questions we asked was about gender identity. And we asked this question as a way for students to feel comfortable when filling out the survey. In fact, this is surprising to me because we can see that most of the survey's respondents identified as female. We also had some responses in the open-ended questions of our survey where youth expressed that they were very appreciative that they included others and agender, gender fluid, and non-binary as an option for them to choose because they felt really included. And that means a lot to us in doing these surveys because, as I mentioned before, we want to be able to help all youth in the Monterey County. So feeling included and welcomed is very important because that is what will keep us connected. That is what will help our youth feel more comfortable and safe when talking about the mental health issues they are facing. Which actually leads me to our next question, which is, what racial or ethnic group do you belong to? We think that this pretty much represents their racial identity in the county, which is good. So taking into consideration the percentages we have as our racial and ethnic groups, I would like to mention that no matter your background, whether you are white, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, Black, or Native American, we're all striving for the same purpose. A mental health solution is what we all want. However, asking this question gives us a good representation as to how diverse we are in our county, in the sense that we may have 43% of the responses be white, 18% of them being Hispanic or Latino, but we are also connected because we want to change in our county. We want to be able to know how to appropriately approach someone who is suffering with a mental health issue. And this concludes the demographic portion of the survey. So now we're going to dig into some of the quantitative and qualitative part of the survey.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's great. Okay.
So then we asked, to what extent do you think there's an increased need for access to mental health services for the youth in our community? And we found that around 46% of users responded somewhat. There's a somewhat need. And then even more, around 48% of users responded that to a great extent, there's an increased need for access to these mental health services due to the pandemic specifically. And that just poses the overall question, how has this seclusion affected the minds of young people? And why young people specifically? You know, we see adults, they're secluded, similar to young people, but often they're alone. We know that a lot of youth, a lot of teenagers, they have their families with them during these times. So why were they affected so negatively, even if they might have been communicating with their families or their relatives on a daily basis? And then we also, the next question we asked was, how comfortable are you having talks about mental health issues with your friends? And I thought that the results for this data in particular were very surprising. Maybe it's just my personal bias, my own personal family, but we found that 56.8% of survey takers responded that they were either comfortable or very comfortable talking about mental health with their friends. And although 14.7% responded with they were uncomfortable or very uncomfortable, I think that's to be expected because there's still a lot of stigma around certain areas of mental health, as we'll see that some are talked about less than others in upcoming data. But for that comfortable level, it was just very surprising when we first analyzed it. And I remember we were in a Zoom meeting talking about it and we instantly brought up, what if we divided the responses by gender, see the discrepancies between those who identify as female and those who identify as male and how they responded to this question. I think that definitely poses a good question for further research, and I would really love to see what comes out of that.
What did you find when you separated them out, males and females, who are more likely to be comfortable?
Well, with this survey, we had a majority of 60% of females taking.
So
the
more
survey.
females, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. That's great. Yeah. Very interesting. Thank you, you guys. Any other comments on any of these findings that you have so far? I think it's, you know, we talk about stigma a lot. We've talked about stigma today, this morning. The doctors were talking a lot about stigma, and you're kind of showing that we can divide that up and people, in general, youth are pretty comfortable talking about it now. But girls are more comfortable than boys. And so that's a good, I love the way you pointed that out for further research. Okay, great.
Yeah, that's also a topic I'm going to be discussing towards the end of this. Why males might feel less comfortable talking about youth about mental health issues than females.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's
Yeah,
go on.
the next question that we posed on the survey was, have any of your friends shared with you that they're experiencing any of the following? And one of the first things that we noticed when we looked at this data set was that anxiety, depression, substance abuse, self-harm, eating disorders, and thoughts of ending their life all spiked during junior year of high school. And when we first looked at this, it was a little bit shocking because we kind of expected each issue to be quite even among the grades. But then as we looked at it more, it started to make more sense. Junior year is overall just a very stressful year. There's a lot more homework, there's a lot more tests, there's a lot more pressure because at least I was told in school, sophomore and junior year are the years that colleges look at specifically for grades and extracurricular activities and attendance. So most students do have a goal of what college they want to go to. So if they thrive a lot with academic validation, there's going to be a lot of stress to try and do their best in school. And that just leaves less room for self-care and focusing on how they're doing because they're so fixated on, doing well in school because, that's what's preached in school is if you do well in school, if you have good grades, you're okay, you're doing fine. And if you have bad grades, well, something must be wrong with you. But that's not always the case. You can be perfectly content with yourself and maybe not have the best grades. Another reason that we came up with is perhaps, juniors are more comfortable sharing with their friends because, once again, the question was, have any of your friends shared with you the following? So perhaps because they've been in high school longer and maybe have found more or a friend group they're more comfortable with sharing these problems with, maybe that's why we see a spike in these mental health issues. Another thing that we noticed when looking at this data set was that substance abuse was relatively low compared to all of the other mental health issues. And to me, that was a little bit surprising because I know that at least in my school, substance abuse is one of the most talked about issues. So I expected it to be a lot bigger on this chart. But when we thought about it, substance abuse is because maybe it is talked about a lot more in schools. There's a lot more education about it. There's a lot more, when there's more education, people know what to do. They know what to avoid. I've had, public speakers come to my school and talk about the side effects of different drugs and how easy it is to get addicted and like where you can go for help. But we don't see that as much with, eating disorders or self-harm or depression or anxiety. So maybe more people, because they've been educated, suffer with substance abuse less. But then we kind of came up with an opposite reason. There is a lot of stigma around substance abuse, even though it is talked about a lot. They are doing something that is illegal. So maybe that it would be harder for them to open up to their friends, sharing that they do suffer with substance abuse because they're afraid it might put them at risk legally, or, they don't want to receive the feedback of, oh, well, how could you do that to yourself? Why is that the way that, you cope with your problems? So these are all potential reasons why, the substance abuse percentages were lower.
Interesting. Okay.
Next, we have, if you're going through a challenging time, where would you go for support? And 76% of people answered that they feel comfortable talking to a friend. And this is probably because friends are a little bit more casual to talk to, and it's easier to kind of guide your way through a conversation. And 43% of people answered that they would go to a parent or guardian for support. And the lowest percentage was at 6% for a support hotline. And a recommendation can be to create a campaign to normalize the usage of these hotlines and It's surprising that it's the lowest percent because on our ID cards at school, we have a list of hotlines to use, and not very many teens utilize this. And 20% clicked I don't know, which is a concern because we want to make sure that they're getting the support they need. And 26% of people went online for support, but we don't know how reliable or accurate this information is how, for the support that they're getting. And there needs to be more trained adults and teens. And the number one need is a trusted adult.
The next survey question that we asked was, do you think your community would benefit from an integrated youth center with support for mental health, physical health, substance use, peer support, education, and family support services? Overwhelmingly, a total of 80% of survey respondents said that our community would benefit from having an integrated youth center. Out of the 278 people who responded to this question on the survey, this means that 222 believe that there is a positive use for the center. Well, 18.7% of students are unsure, only leaving a slim 1.4% saying that there would be no use for this center. The amount of response regarding the need for a center for youth makes it apparent that a center is completely necessary in the recovery and stabilization of teens' mental health after coming out of a pandemic. This question leads into the next, which is, in your opinion, if an integrated center for youth existed, how likely are the youth to utilize the space and services? Well, 73% of the survey respondents said that they would utilize an alcove center and its services. Still 27% said that they were unsure or unlikely to take advantage of these services. We believe possible reasoning for this includes location, privacy, climate, and accessibility, which will all be talked about in greater detail later. And this proves that if there is an incredibly large amount of respondents that say that they won't put this to use, that we should add it to already in place wellness centers at our high schools and be putting in wellness centers in high schools so that the location is more accessible for other students. After researching all of these questions, we found 5 themes that emerged from the open-ended question. The 5 themes including privacy, having it be peer-to-peer, making sure that staff are incredibly professional, having a safe, accessible, and welcoming space, as well as decreasing a stigma surrounding mental health through education. The theme that I chose to take on was privacy. Students wanted to be able to visit anonymously and know that all the information they shared would remain confidential and not have to worry about family members, peers, teachers, friends judging them for what they stated in confidentiality. A quote from one survey respondent stated, "I feel like privacy is a big thing for a lot of people my age. When it comes to talking about mental health, so making sure that their personal information wouldn't be shown to anyone else at all would help make youth feel safe and comfortable and more open to talking to others about their struggles."
A second theme that emerged from this last open-ended question was peer-to-peer interactions. And students wanted peer support groups that they could feel comfortable with and they could relate to. And here's one quote from a respondent regarding peer-to-peer interactions. It said, "I think a peer leadership program would be really helpful. A lot of people seem to have a dearth of options for people to talk to, and sometimes talking to an adult feels awkward." And we could see this from one of the last slides where 76% of respondents chose a friend over a parent. Only 46% of respondents chose that they would to go to a parent, which is, it was pretty sad to see that such low numbers.
Yeah, and so this leads us to our next theme, which is staff professionalism. Staff professionalism is actually key to any staff member who is trying to help a student with a mental health issue. So being professional when listening to a student means being respectful and non-judgmental, diverse, kind, and patient. And I can go on and on as to giving you all examples as to what it means to be a staff professional. So circling back to the question as to how we can create a space where youth feel safe and comfortable and connecting it to staff professionalism, in order to make youth feel safe and comfortable, staff have to follow the virtues of characteristics I mentioned before. Also, courses that staff can take as to knowing how to approach someone that is suffering from a mental health issue, will be very beneficial, not only to the students, but to all people who suffer from mental health issues. So referring back to the pie charts that were shown, like my colleague Emily Fernandez mentioned, 76% of students answered that they felt comfortable talking to a friend. This refers back to my point of having staff take these courses as to know how to properly approach someone or a student with a mental health issue, because a trusted adult is what a student needs, which is why I will be referring to Emily now, where she will be explaining the next bulletin.
Our fourth theme that we noticed was safe, accessible, and welcoming space. Students wanted a comfortable space to relax that is casual, neutral, inclusive, and homey, while offering a variety of support services. And a quote from the survey is, "Create a space that is free of judgment where students can get the resources they need, and the people there or volunteers seemed interested and devoted to helping these students, creating a space that can be used as an escape from everyday life, a place where people can come to feel comfortable and let off steam." Creating a comfortable space where students can let off steam is important because, as Roxy mentioned, you're going to be stressed in school, and I think if we have the space, I think these mental health issues will be the percentages will be lower.
The next theme that was brought up was to decrease stigma surrounding mental health through education. The staff, space, and community outreach, and this is also including parents. Once again, the aspect that we brought up of having a trusted adult, usually a trusted adult is a parent. These people should all work to normalize seeking out treatment for mental health. I think that, when a student or just a youth reaches out to their trusted adult or even a friend, the first question that comes to their mind is, what's happening to me? Is it normal? This shouldn't be happening to me. And that's not the way that I want youth to think about mental health issues, and to stop this stigma that it isn't normal and that it shouldn't be happening. Friends and trusted adults should be there to, remind these people that this is a part of being a human being. Sometimes, human brains are very complex and interesting, but they're also very sensitive. And especially if you're put through a stressful or traumatic situation, if the result of that is, depression or anxiety or an eating disorder, that's normal. That's not weird. That's the stigma shouldn't be there. The question should be, where can I get treatment? Where can I find a group of people like me who are going through similar issues? Because there's a lot of people out there. I mean, millions of people suffer with mental health disorders. So where can I find a group, like me, we can talk about this? Or, some people aren't as social with it, or if they just want to find a professional to help them seek treatment. I think that's the question that we should be asking. And if we just talk about, mental health in schools more and educate people, I think that the stigma will go down and people will be more willing to talk about their problems and find treatment.
Yeah, and I definitely think we see some of this stigma affecting a lot of our data, like the data you discussed, where we saw that both, or I should say all three of substance use, self-harm, and eating disorders were in the lower percentages of being talked about or mentioned. And I definitely feel like those three issues specifically are more common to end up in with responses from parents or adults or even friends asking, why are you doing this to yourself? Why would you ever do this? Just they're met with a lot of judgment. I definitely think that's one of the reasons we see them in such low percentages of being talked about or mentioned. And we also have a quote from one of the survey participants that says, "We can spread awareness on mental health issues and destigmatize it to make people feel more comfortable in speaking on and recognizing issues."
So whenever you do a study, part of the study is like, what did you end up curious about? You ask questions and then questions emerge, right? And we've already heard quite a bit of this. And also, like, then you find this data and then you say, so what? What do we do with it, right? So I do want to tell you, before we go on to the suggested for future research and what you want people to take from here, that because of this survey, what you found that youth were more comfortable talking to a friend and less comfortable talking to a parent. But we know, like Emily said, that the number one protective factor in youth mental health challenges, I know you've already said this, Emily, but I want to tell you, we started youth mental health first aid training for parents because of what you did. So there's an application, you have research. And so we've trained, since we got your first data set, which came in quite a while ago, we knew at AIM, we knew we had to do this, right? And so I just want to thank you for that. And I know that this almost 100 parents, and not just parents, but coaches, even therapists, youth leaders that have been trained in it's thanks to this. This is the application. This is the implementation science of research. We're taking your research and we're making it real. And so I want to give a personal thank you. And I know some people in the audience have gone through that training, and thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, so you did end up curious about a few things, right? You know, when you answer questions, you think, oh, we should have asked it this way, or what do we know about that? You get more and more curious with research. So share with us, if you would, if some of you want to kind of share what you would suggest for future studies.
So one of the questions that arose from the study was, why do males have a harder time at talking about mental health issues? And I want to start off by saying we don't talk about mental health enough in our society, and most especially guys. And this is because from a young age, we were taught pretty quickly how we're supposed to act in society. Be tough, don't show your emotions, stop crying like a girl. And it's important to realize that it's okay to cry, and it's okay to approach someone that you trust and tell them, hey, I'm struggling, I need help. And I also believe one of the challenges that we males face in society is that we tend to mistake mental health issues as personal weaknesses. And we believe we should handle these problems on our own, and we shouldn't get any help from anyone because they're our problem, so we can deal with them on our own. But that's not true. We need to realize that it's important to reach out to friends, family, parents, and ask for help.
Thank you. Any others? Yeah.
Another question that we have from seeing the results of our survey regarded race. So does ethnicity and or culture play a part in mental health? Looking at the pie chart that Sypmosium had mentioned before about race and ethnic group, we see that 43% of respondents were white, 19% were Hispanic or Latino, and those are the two most populated answers. So what happens between those two that make their responses so strong, so high, so many responses? So in my opinion, directly, no. Race and culture has no part in mental health, but indirectly it does. Different cultures have different ways of responding to mental health issues, such as this family says, oh no, let's go take you to a therapist, it's okay. Well, this other family doesn't have enough money, or they have different views saying, oh no, it's in your head. So different culture and different perspectives on mental health definitely plays a part in how it's treated, which can make it worse. If you have a little issue, it can spiral into a bigger issue because of how it was dealt with.
So you guys, if you were to ask questions about that, like you want to learn like what role culture plays, so you might do qualitative open-ended questions for people to answer, or quantitative. You might do, so you would design a survey like you've already learned to do to find out those things, like what are going deeper. Thank you. That's great. Any other stuff that you would be curious about?
I thought of the question, how can mental health be better supported during junior year? With the statistics that I showed before, junior year was very high with all the mental health issues. And I think, a solution to this could be talking about self-care more, especially during junior year. Obviously, education about mental health and self-care is beneficial to every grade level, but because of what we saw with the data set junior year, just another, reminder about, it's not all about grades. It's not all about academics. You're the center of everything. And if you're personally not doing well, everything dominoes after that. I'm sure we've all gone to work or school, super tired, and you're not, your mind isn't thinking I'm going to finish this assignment, or, oh, I need to catch up on this. Your mind is thinking, I want to go to sleep. And if someone, who has something more severe, such as depression, comes to school, or is trying to work on assignments, they're not thinking that the math test is the most important thing. They're very fixated with their own issues. But because we see school and academic success and validation as such a priority, because we think that, going to college or is the only way that you can be successful in life, you kind of start stressing about being stressful. And yeah, and so if we just try and push education about how to, you can have a balance, and you need a balance between self-care and academic success. Those things should go hand in hand. It shouldn't be different. If you take care of yourself and you're content and you're happy, it's going to be a lot easier to be motivated to do work. And so if somehow we could have, just more education about, what is self-care, what are some ways to do self-care, I think that that would help people feel less stressed and find a balance between the two. Another hypothesis that I kind of came up with while looking at the substance abuse statistic is that perhaps there is a correlation between mental health issues and substance abuse. Sometimes they're looked at as separately, but I think, a person struggling maybe with self-harm or anxiety or depression or any of these issues might turn to substance abuse as a coping mechanism, and that those things, they're correlated. So, maybe someone had a friend that they put down for having anxiety, and they put them down for having substance abuse issues. And if in the future, we could have more research saying, this many people have mental health disorders and this many people use substance abuse as their coping mechanism, that education can be intertwined in schools and not be so separated, like just talking about substance abuse and then only talking about depression. I think, if in school it was talked about, you can suffer with these mental health disorders, but it's very common to turn to drugs because they artificially, make you happy. And we can try and teach people healthier coping mechanisms and better ways to seek out treatment.
Great. Other thoughts? Yeah, June?
Yeah, I think that also brings us to asking more questions just about mental health education. And, I think we need to know at what age and grade that this mental health education is being given. I know for my school, Carmel High School, and for a lot of other schools in the area, mental health classes are given freshman year. But with the data we found with this survey, it seems that mental health issues are spiking junior year. So clearly something is not getting across in those freshman mental health classes. And there's an important piece of education that's clearly being left out, and that's not getting utilized by a lot of high schoolers. So we need to ask the question, what can we do to reform these mental health classes?
Anything else? Go ahead. Yeah. go
Yeah,
ahead.
so one of the other suggestions for further research was if more mental health education should be taught in freshman classes. Simple answer is yes. Mental health
Yes.
is very, very important. Moreover, a freshman, a student who is new to a different school environment and is eager to know more about what their school has to offer, it's important for them to know how important their mental health is. And so joining sports clubs, serving hours to their community is great. And especially to a student who is starting to see the importance of being involved in school. But speaking from a senior perspective, I guess, I wish someone would have told me how important mental health is, how important my mental health is. Mental health itself is not talked about enough. So if we introduce the importance of taking care of yourself or taking care of oneself to a student who is into a different school environment, it will save so many lives. And at a young age, it will give them a better perspective as to how their health comes first before anything.
Oh, thank you. Brilliant.
Another suggestion is why don't students use more support hotlines? I think the idea of it is intimidating to teens. That's why it's not utilized as much. As I mentioned, I think if we make a campaign or some sort of like outreach to students and let them know that it's okay if you use these hotlines, I think more teens would be a little bit comfortable using them. And if we kind of share how to use them, people don't know how to use them and where to go. So I think if we educate people on it, more teens would utilize this tool.
You know, Emily, one of the doctors today talked about using text instead of phone calls because you guys text so much more. So I'm curious, is there a text line on the back of your card?
Yeah, there is actually.
There's a text line. So so this survey respondents even said they wouldn't text. Wow.
I don't think that was an answer on the.
Oh, we'll have to look into that. That's further research. Yeah, I'll be curious about that. You know, whether that may be a question you ask in further studies, right? So I have a question for you. So Stanford Behavioral Health asked you to do a needs assessment for an alcove site, you know, the behavioral, it's not a behavioral health center, like an all-inclusive center described as you described. So what would your conclusion be? What would your recommendation be? Would it be a definite yes, or what's your answer for that? I see Michael picking up the microphone. He has an opinion. Marley tried to grab it, but Michael got, no, I'm kidding. Go ahead, Michael. Yeah.
We came to two conclusions, yes and no. I personally believe that based on some of the graphs, about 80% of respondents said that there is a need for a youth center. However, another graph, it said how likely are youth to utilize these centers, and only 13% said that youth are likely to utilize these centers. Realistically, you know, young people aren't very likely to drive over to youth centers. Young people are busy too with school, sports, and a youth center wouldn't be the most efficient way of using the money probably for mental health issues, and perhaps
like a separate youth center, a new youth center.
Yeah.
You don't think so?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one conclusion that we reached.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason why maybe the youth center wouldn't be utilized as much is because, you know, they're going to have to get probably their parents to drive them over there. And if that's not the person that they want to talk to about these issues, they're probably not going to utilize it. You know, with the research, we saw that most of youth turn to their friends. And so what I think the money should go towards is better education and more training. You know, because the youth can be trained, parents can be trained. And I think that's how we can start to make people feel more comfortable. I think the first step is just making people feel more comfortable and really normalizing mental health. And then the second step would to be to have you know, alcoves and centers, but we're still kind of in that first step of making it normalized. And so if, you know, the money goes towards training and education in schools, then I think we will see a greater increase in need and want to go to a center.
So what about, I think you're assuming location, right? That it's an offsite. So what about a closer location to a school, or do you have any suggestions about that?
Yeah, I think, if we had mental health centers in schools, that would be a lot better because,
That's part of the governor's plan, is to get
Yes.
as many, yeah, so that's good.
yeah, I think that would work a lot better because, it takes the driving aspect out and it also leaves it so it's more anonymous kind of, so you can just walk down to the office and have a professional there. And then of course you can also, they can talk to their friends about it, and maybe they find out that multiple of their school friends are going through the same thing and they can all walk down there together, and kind of make it more inclusive. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Okay, good. We have maybe time for one question. Anybody have a question from the audience? Okay. Can't see. Come on. Come on up. Oh, it's Dr. Joshi. He has a question. Of course you do. Okay.
I'm so inspired by your. I'm Shashank Joshi, professor of psychiatry, dad, Little League coach, friend of Steve Adelsheim and Vicky's and the people you're working with. Live right up the street from Palo Alto's Alcove site. I think your science is so important. You combine quantitative and qualitative. You heard from the youth about a youth mental health center, about an Alcove center. These centers are coming. And what is so compelling about what you presented was, like, for example, the yes and no answer. I thought that was so well done, because yes, there's an opportunity. My opinion is, and my experience is, if you build it, they will come. But you also mentioned some very important on the ground challenges. Like, for example, 12 and over can access this center. What a concept, without their parents' permission. Of course, we'd like to get parents involved at some point, but for the first step, if they have to get driven over by their parents, that could be a real barrier. So talking about where it could be located. And again, coming up with ideas from the community with the youth to formulate the ideas about where it might be. Those are all so important. And they're not things that the grown-ups can do, really. I mean, they're part of the partnership, of course, but I'm just so impressed that you all conducted the research, presented the research. It was very compelling and very well done. So thank you. I have seen the future and it looks bright.
Dr. Adelsheim is watching on video. Do you have any other comments? You guys want to talk about that? You look like you did. We have like one more minute. Yes, actually, we have certificates of achievement for you, and we have the honor of having. We have a couple, one from the County Board of Supervisors and then one from Congressman Panetta's office. And I think he's here. Yeah, do you want to come up and yeah, a proud father. Yes, I mean, what, this must be a really proud moment for you. Yeah.
Proud to be a father, but also proud to be a community member here on the Central Coast. Obviously, I wanted to say thank you and provide you with these certificates, these congressional certificates, to let you know that through your voices, your peers' voices are heard, but more importantly, your message is heard, and not just in this community, but in the halls of Washington, D.C. And it's through that messaging, I can tell you that hopefully we can have funding for these alcoves and other community centers that will help all of our youth. So just want to say thank you, provide you with these certificates, and know how much it means to me as a community member, as a representative, and yes, as a father, for all the work you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll call back. Okay. Roxy Bennett. And this is from the County Board of Supervisors. Okay, and now we have Michael Julian. Michael. Thank you from the County Board of Supervisors as well. Marley Miller, the freshman among the group. How brave to be a freshman with these. And yes. And Sitlali Nava, Sitlali, oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, and we have this for you. And Emily Fernandez. Emily, thank you. What a great job. You did. And the last one on the stack is Gia Panetta. Yeah. You know, having all of you on this, I see whatever you want to do, the change that you want to make in the world, you've already begun. And, you know, we've talked a lot about this in the sessions on Zoom about living a life on purpose, live your life on purpose, and that you're doing something larger than yourself that will have a ripple effect for years to come. And you are all invited back as consultants for the next round of Ideas Lab, and you can actually train the next group on the kinds of questions that you still have and that what you learned. And so you take what you learn and you help others. And so that's what you've done. And we are so grateful. Thank you.